Welcome to Witchcast!
Cause it's Witchcast.
I'm Emily.
I'm Kate.
And we're your co-hosts of the Witchcast podcast.
That's right. We're your learning, growing, ever-evolving novice witches here to explore everything under the woo-woo, esoteric, spiritual umbrella.
And what a lovely umbrella it is. I feel like I'm bopping along today. There's a rhythm to that.
Boom, bop, boom, bop.
And today we have a very special guest. She was on last season and we said, you gotta come back.
Mm-hmm.
And she's back. So we have
Woo-hoo.
sorceress, seer, and trollkvinne Rose Aurora back. Rose, welcome back.
Thank you. It's so nice to
Yay.
be back. I'm very, very delighted to be here. Thank you.
We're so
Thrilled to have you.
excited. Yeah.
Remind the people. Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Talk to the people. So I am a faerie seer. I'm proud to be part of a sorceress lineage of Celtic origin, which is my faerie tradition and what I consider to be my main tradition. I work with the fair folk. I've been in relationship with them for many years. And in my work as a, professional spiritual worker, I act as an intermediary between fairies and humans, but also between elves and humans, trolls and humans, lots of fun kind of inhuman and human relations. As you mentioned, I'm also a practitioner of the Scandinavian system of folk magic and sorcery known as trolldom. I was formerly trained as an apprentice in trolldom under Johannes Gordbeck, who folks might know. He has a book called Trolldom, Spells and Methods of the Norse Folk Magic Tradition, which I highly recommend to people if they're interested in learning more about the tradition, seeing some of the traditional spells and things like that. That's a little bit about me. And as I mentioned, I'm a spiritual worker, so I help people with the fairy, elf, troll-related troubles, conduct readings, healing, spell work, and I also teach/mentor people in the magical arts.
Spectacular. And that's listeners who are, returning listeners will remember that we had Rose on to talk about the fair folk last season. And at the end of the episode, we did say we would love to chat about some trolldom. And so that's what we'll be talking about today is it is a little bit of troll magic.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Hell yeah. Well, you already answered in some ways my first question, which was going to be just a little bit about your background in trolldom. What got you interested in it in the first place?
So I had a little bit, I had a little bit of what I would call crossover training from my fairy tradition. There is some overlap, and I've kind of talked about this on some other podcasts as well, that especially when you kind of get into the Scotland and Scottish traditions and things like that, there tends to be quite a bit of overlap between the folk magic and sorcery of Scotland, and to an extent Ireland as well, and the Norse traditions, because of the fact that the Vikings raided those countries. Starting around, I believe, the 8th century. And there's still actually a lot of the Norse culture in things like place names, integration in the Gaelic languages, especially in Scotland. You kind of see in some of the islands and things like that, there's still, sort of Viking celebrations and things like that. So you see a lot of overlap, even in the terminology of referring to the elves and things like that. Obviously, the term elf comes from alf or alfar in the Norse languages. And you see that in use sort of coming down the centuries, especially in Scotland. So, it's something that's kind of an overlap with my fairy tradition. And I was drawn to Norse and Germanic practices quite a few years ago, initially because of the elves, as well as having an ancestral connection to those practices. My family is part Norwegian. So
Cool.
I already had that experience there because of that sort of crossover training. And interactions with beings I would class as Alfar or elves. And from there, I was sort of brought to the gods and other spirits in Norse practice. And then I met my trolldom teacher, Johannes Gordbeck, and he became my mentor in the trolldom tradition, and I studied under him as an apprentice. And, from there, the trolldom training gave me even more knowledge and tools for working with those beings in a traditional context. And I'm also just like a huge nerd for folklore and mythology and the Norse myths and the supernatural beings within the folklore is just really fascinating, and it's really beautiful, and all of those traditional practices that are still living traditions today. And so I feel really blessed to kind of, have been brought into that and welcomed into that tradition.
Amazing. That's that all makes perfect sense. And now that you say that, we were talking about before the episode very quickly. I said that I took weirdly a little bit of Norwegian, and I come from in Nova Scotia. There are people who speak Gaelic, including like in the areas around where like a lot of my family is. So I knew some Scottish Gaelic, and when I started learning Norwegian, what I learned was that there's words in common.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And then when I went to Norway, I was like, oh, that's funny. Like, kirk, 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 like, which means church. Like,
yeah, it's really funny, is that I was just talking about this the other day, is that like not that long ago, one of the Scottish islands was actually trying to become part of Norway again.
Wow.
So I guess they were kind of sick of some UK nonsense in general, so they were like, I think we want to be with the Vikings again.
I can see it.
That
I
makes
love
sense.
that. And just okay, so laying some groundwork here. I know that so when people think of trolls, they think of like fairy tale trolls, large creatures, but trolldom and troll magic is not just about those, right? It's more of like a blanket term for Scandinavian folk magic. Is that right? Or tell me more. Tell me more. How would you define trolldom?
Yeah, so I would say trolldom itself is, so here's actually the first thing I should probably start with is sort of explaining the meaning behind the word troll itself.
Yes, thank you.
What's interesting?
That's
What's
what I
that?
was trying to ask. Yeah.
Oh no, we're like, yes, ooh, tell us
Yeah,
more.
great.
Okay, perfect. So what's interesting about the word troll is that across Scandinavia, and obviously there's going to be regional differences and slight variations on the word or how it's spelled, things like that. But while troll is a word that can refer to the type of supernatural being that most people are familiar with, it also just means magic. So the word trolldom essentially means, the kingdom or domain of trolls, a type of magic and sorcery, but that is also sometimes utilized by or taught to humans by trolls. So that's already kind of a thing that I think maybe most people don't really know about the word troll itself, and like why is that called trolldom? And so that's kind of where I would start. Trolldom itself, as sort of a cursory definition, is a collective term for, again, the folk magic and sorcery found within Scandinavia. It's the magic of everyday people as well as the magic of specialist practitioners. So there's still to this day sort of a sense of apprehension around the word and the idea of trolldom. It's, in the past, it was sort of associated with witchcraft and things like that, and the fact that trolls themselves are something that are sort of just like the elves, in fact, are just sort of feared, and thought of as like, oh, they can really do a lot of stuff to humans that maybe we would not like. So there is that sort of apprehension, a little bit of a darker side of the idea, the concept of trolldom. So many troll cunning people are the village healer and intercessor between humans and spirits of all types, not just trolls, but again, like, human dead, the ancestors, elves, the gods, things like that. So again, there's usually a healthy dose of fear around trolldom and its practitioners in Scandinavia throughout the ages, as it's well known that trolldom, just like most systems of folk magic and sorcery, it can be used to both heal or to harm. So hopefully that kind of gives like a little quick definition of trolldom.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what does sort of your work in like being a trollkvinne and like practicing trolldom, such as it is, or sorry, I feel like doing my best with the terminology.
No worries, it can be a mouthful. I get it.
what does your sort of experience with it entail? What are you doing, or what's your sort of like active practice look like, to the degree that you're able or willing to talk about it?
Hmm. So I think one thing that's kind of interesting that also kind of plays into my practice is that I think when people think of like Norse practices in general, they tend to think of mostly just like asatru, which is more kind of I would say more religious minded and sort of focused on like the seer, the gods, things like that. And while there are definitely, including old traditional spells within trolldom that call upon Odin or whatever, I think within the living tradition, especially as I've kind of been taught, there is a little more focus on what I would call maybe like everyday spirits as opposed to like big deities and things like that. And actually, one thing that some people are really surprised about with sort of the living traditions of trolldom is that there's actually quite a lot of Christianity
Hmm.
within the folk magic. You're actually more likely to see some of the traditional spells, calling on Christian spirits like God, Jesus, the devil, even like the devil definitely pops up in some of the traditional spells. And
Interesting.
while, especially the ones that have like the devil or going to the crossroads and things like that, while their origins might be, likely to be something that was originally calling on Odin or something like that, traditions evolve with the people, and obviously Christianity has spread out quite a lot, including into Scandinavia. And so, just like with a lot of different folk magic traditions of different cultures, the popular religion was adapted into the folk magic. So you do see that quite a bit, and a lot of those traditional spells incorporate Christian aspects and things like that. But I do think that there is also, even aside from that, there is a focus on, the dead, um, elves, trolls, obviously, and sort of interacting and living alongside those beings, which is definitely something that I would say is a major part of my practice. Obviously, I kind of tend to talk more publicly about things like the elves or trolls and inhuman spirits, but the dead is definitely something that comes into play in both of my main traditions. My faerie tradition as well as trolldom, and being trained on how to work with the dead, how to proper interaction, proper graveyard technique, all things that kind of you find in most folk magic traditions. Trolldom and my main tradition, like they're no different. So and there's definitely, when it comes to the dead, even things like use of human remains is a big thing in like a lot of traditional spells and practices. There's a number of traditional spells that include the use of human bone, teeth, fingernails, things like that. The idea that parts of the dead, usually it's like bones and things like that, are used in spells because they're considered to be a connection to the other world in some way, or have
Wow.
some sort of inherent power, even including things like healing people, the use of a human bone to help heal somebody,
Hmm.
grave dirt, things like that. Taking things to a certain kind of tree within the cemetery, or just trees in general. So I would say, like, I definitely kind of think that all of the traditional practices that I'm involved in, whether it's my main tradition or trolldom, I tend to think of them as kind of down home a little bit. They're very kind of like the everyday work of the folk. As corny as that might sound, it's called folk magic for a reason. It's not the stuff necessarily that the royals might have been doing, or the high ceremonial magicians and things like that. It's something that, even though it might be more specific to a specialist practitioner, it's still incorporating the use of everyday tools, everyday spirits, like I said, too. So hopefully that kind of gives an idea of what the flavor is.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So cool. I have a quick question. How I have like actually 50 million questions, but um Well, I'll ask one. So, how popular or widespread would you say trolldom is right now? Like, in terms of, worldwide, but also within Scandinavia. I'm curious, is this kind of more of a has is it very popular, still kind of like a culturally practiced thing, or is this more kind of been pushed aside as society has evolved to more echelons? Is
Mm.
that the right word? I don't know. I'm curious how popular it is.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a good question. I think, based on what I've seen and also what my teacher has talked about, I think on the sort of broader, internet, like worldwide culture, I think that it's growing. And I think a huge part of that is owed to my teacher because
He
he
like
has
wrote
his
the book.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a book. He doesn't do a lot of like interviews and stuff like that, but he has done some. But he also has some classes and things like that that people can take online. Obviously, like apprentice students and things like that, like me, are going out there and also spreading the practice and things like that. So I think that in the sort of greater worldwide slash internet culture, it's definitely growing, and people are becoming a lot more acquainted with it, and on a broader scale. Within Scandinavia, I think it's hard to say. Obviously, I think probably in some places it might be kind of more widespread or more widely practiced, perhaps. But I think for the most part, it's something that's a little bit. I don't want to say like concealed, as in people are necessarily trying to hide it. Definitely, some people would, of course, but I think it's just sort of quiet. I think. I mean, I wouldn't want to speak for Scandinavians in general, but I feel like they are very kind of those cultures tend to be kind of subtle, like they're, even in their in the way that they speak their languages and their mannerisms and things like that. The Scandinavian people I've known are they're not flashy people. They don't feel like a need to show off. And
Mm.
so I think in some ways it's also like it's part of their culture in the sense that, like, for example, where my teacher lives, he's within walking distance to like burial mounds from like Viking age, and
Wow.
elf mounds and things like that, and like the what they call the elf mills, which are basically these large boulders that back in the day, they basically hollowed out little holes in them to place offerings to the elves. And so, and those practices are still done. Like maybe they're not as sort of open about it, or maybe it's not considered as much the norm as maybe it was in the Viking age. But people do still do those practices. They go and leave butter in the little elf cups, as they call them. Those are the little holes that they drill into the rocks. And things like that. So I think it's something that maybe because Scandinavians, I think in general, are not like super flashy, like in your face people. I feel like maybe it might seem to maybe Americans who are more flashy people, right? We're sort of more like vivacious and open about these things. Maybe it would seem more like it's kind of occulted, for lack of a better term, but I do think it definitely is still living traditions, though. These things are still being passed down and still being kept alive as much as possible, and may it always be the case. So
Yeah.
That's
That's
great.
yeah, I feel like so many folk traditions also, it's like people grow up doing little like rituals and things that they don't even necessarily say like, "Oh,
oh
I'm
yeah,
going to, I'm necessarily doing this or that." It's just like, "Yeah, we go put the butter in the hole." Like that's part of what
exactly,
we do,
exactly, yeah.
And then you leave and you're like, "I didn't even know that was just me." Like, I thought
Yeah,
everybody did that.
I think people too will see, like, especially if they check out Johannes's book, some of the spells are obviously like the way he has it kind of set up in the book is like it will be the spell, what country it kind of originates from or is popular in, what century it was written down in, etc. Like some of the spells you can obviously tell that it would be something more like a specialist practitioner, a troll cunning person would have known. But then some of the spells are really simple things that you can tell, like, oh, like, you know, everybody's grandma probably knows that, or at least most of the grandmas, you know, things like that. So I think it's a nice mix to kind of see. And again, it is practices that are kind of brought together from the everyday people as well as the specialists. So
very cool. That sounds like a great book to read also. Like,
yes.
Yeah, I love it. Check it out.
It's
really dense. It has a ton of stuff in it. So
we'll definitely link to it on our website and on our Instagram when we post this as well, of course.
Awesome.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay, we've talked a little bit about how trolldom and like troll lore isn't just about the supernatural beings known as trolls. But maybe we should talk a little bit about those supernatural beings. So I feel like...
please. I really want to know more.
Yeah. There's a lot of sort of conceptions about what a troll is. You know, you think of like a large man-eating thing that turns into stone if it hits the daylight would be the one that I think of when I think, or like, you know, there's a lot of different forms of trolls in the world. What I guess what do you believe, or like what does your practice hold? How do you see trolls? Tell us about the troll as entity.
Yeah. So when we're speaking of the, I guess you could say, species of being, you know, obviously we are referring to a type of supernatural creature with magical abilities and powers within Scandinavian and Icelandic folklore. And like elves and dwarves, trolls have, you know, their own cultures, their own otherworldly realms that they dwell in. However, they are often also found within the natural landscape of the human world, or Midgard. And there are locations within Scandinavia, as I kind of mentioned earlier, with place names that refer to trolls. So it's still something that's sort of within the daily life, so to speak, even just, you know, living near a troll church, or, you know, a troll mound, things like that. Trolls enjoy activities that humans as well as elves do, including eating, drinking, sleeping, fighting, having sex, getting married, producing offspring. Trolls are also known to steal and kidnap humans, which is something I think people generally kind of associate with elves and fairies. And obviously that is a huge thing in elf and fairy lore, but it actually is also something in troll lore as well. Another overlap between trolls and elves is the idea of troll shot. Obviously, people might be more familiar with the term elf shot, which is, of course, like a supernatural projectile that elves are thought to shoot at humans that causes them harm. And it's the same thing with troll shot. It's some sort of little supernatural projectile, which sometimes can be invisible, but it can also be like a sort of like a little arrowhead, things like that. And it's known as troll shot. So essentially, if people are into D&D, it's like the troll version of magic missile. You know?
Got it.
Yeah. So that's kind of a little overlap there with elves and trolls. While trolls can and definitely do seek out human interaction for various purposes, they are also known to be quite dangerous. There's a lot of stories in which trolls are outright hostile to humans from the get-go, which can, you know, culminate with trolls harming or even killing/eating humans. They're also known to sort of especially detest Christianity in a lot of the folklore. You don't really see stories about trolls that are Christians as much the way you might with elves. So that's kind of a difference there in the trolls versus elves debate. As I mentioned, trolls are often thought to be a part of the landscape. So there's the natural features or more rural areas associated with trolls within Scandinavia. However, trolls, like elves, can also be found in areas that are more populated by humans, or they might seek out more populated areas themselves, things like that. As you mentioned, like a lot of people, when they think of trolls, they think of something kind of like the Tolkien trolls that are like very big, very kind of not super attractive by conventional standards. Maybe even the sunlight thing, which is a thing in a lot of the stories, that trolls cannot abide sunlight. You actually do see that in a few of the stories in Scandinavian myth about dwarves. Some of them turn to stone when they are in the sun, things like that. But overall, trolls can come in diverse shapes and sizes. There is that misconception that they're all ugly or coarse or deformed, but in fact, some trolls can look pretty much indistinguishable from humans. So some of them can be quite handsome or average looking. And as I mentioned earlier, they do seek out human romantic partners and can produce offspring with humans, similar to elves, who also look for human partners and things like that. There's some really funny folk tales about humans and trolls sort of producing offspring or getting married, or even some of the ones that are a troll pursuing a human and the human is just like, oh my god, please no. Like, what is this? So there's some pretty funny stuff in that regard as well, and some really cute stories too as well, where the ones I really love with trolls is where a human actually shows some kindness to a troll, as opposed to just outright being hostile towards them, or shunning them, or trying to use Christian prayers to get rid of them. And the troll is so taken aback by them being nice to them that they immediately fall in love with the human, and they're like, okay, we're getting married now. Kind of cute. So
Yeah, that's sweet.
and then they inevitably either pursue them relentlessly and eventually try to kidnap them into the troll realm or into a mountain or something like that. Or sometimes the human is into it and they want to go to the the kingdom of the trolls, or into the mountain with the troll and things like that. So sometimes it is a happily ever after moment.
Yeah,
but
there's someone for everyone, they say.
Exactly. But on the other hand too, when it comes to sort of troll human relations, as the elves are, trolls are also known to partner with humans for spiritual purposes. So sometimes they teach humans their magic, or strike up deals and pacts with them for various reasons. Some of the terminology in the Norse languages for witches or dark magic is actually synonymous with trolls, depending on the context of where the word is being used. Sometimes the same word for a troll is also the same word for a witch, and there's also some overlap in this sense in some of the myths and even in some of the sagas and things like that, where a troll might also cross over with the Jotun, the giants. Who are also obviously considered to be often very dangerous and things like that, or at least have the potential to be dangerous and powerful and things like that. So so that's some basics on what trolls are like.
I love it. Thank you so much.
This is so fascinating. What are some signs that we could someone could look out for if they were to encounter a troll, especially like you said, they could present as human or humanoid, what would be some indicators that I could be like, wait a second, this might be a troll.
Well, again, obviously, some of them are a little more kind of in appearance what you might expect from things like fairy tales or Tolkien, things like that. Quite large. There may be deformities in the body. Some of them also, because trolls tend to be very sort of associated with the landscape. Sometimes a troll is actually a part of the landscape, in the sense that, oh, here's the mountain, and the mountain is literally a troll. So there can be some kind of interesting stuff in that regard. Now, if you come upon something that looks humanoid in all senses of the word, but you might sense that there is something sort of different about them, I would say it can be quite similar to the way that you might notice a being as an elf. Sometimes in the folklore, they look exactly like humans, elves and trolls. They look exactly like humans, but something sort of tips you off, whether it is sort of an interesting deformity. There's sort of overlap here with the skogsra, which is the forest spirit that looks like a woman from the front, but in the back she has the hollow back. that looks like a hollow tree on her back, basically. So there's things like that. A troll might have a tail, or even some sort of animal connecting to it. There's one that I'm thinking of that I believe a literal snake was like attached to the troll's body, or was maybe like its tail, something like that. So
it's a pretty big sign.
sometimes yeah, I mean, interesting look, but it might be hidden. That's the other thing too, is like in a lot of folk tales, and this is definitely something that crosses over with the Celtic folklore as well, is that these inhuman beings a lot of times will hide their quote unquote deformities, or things that make them obvious that it's not a full human, whether it's like deer feet or goat feet, or having a tail, or the hollow back, or whatever. So sometimes it can be quite hard to differentiate a troll from a human, or an elf from a human, things like that. And then sometimes it's sort of, I think one of the main tip-offs for a lot of these inhuman beings is that feeling, the sense that something is different, something is maybe kind of creepy, or maybe a sense of danger, or a sense of like, just a sense of knowing something is off. It can definitely be like, especially if we're looking at a more humanoid looking troll, that might be your main tip off, is just this sense of, ooh, something's weird here, and obviously they might have powers that sort of tip someone off that they're not quite human. They might hear what you're thinking, or they may actually perform a feat of magic, or just suddenly appear or vanish, things like that. So it can be tricky if they don't have a super obvious outward appearance, but there will be signs.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so in your Instagram bio,
Yes.
You say that you help people with fairy, elf, and troll trouble. What would troll trouble look like?
Yeah.
Ooh. So it's funny because, again, a lot of the troubles, quote unquote, that people could have, humans can have with these inhuman beings, a lot of them overlap.
Yeah.
For example, as I kind of mentioned earlier, people can be pursued romantically by trolls. The troll decides they're in love with the human, or they want to have sex with the human, they want to marry the human. Maybe they even want to kidnap the human and bring them into the mountain, or bring them into the troll world that they live in, so, and one thing I kind of tell people and caution people, especially when you kind of get into the subject of the romantic stuff, a lot of people, in their mind, they'll kind of, for lack of a better term, romanticize it, and think, oh wow, and how great would that be to be loved by a fairy, or loved by a troll, or even a dwarf. In the myths, dwarves pursue people as well, and they can also be difficult to differentiate if it's a human or not. They don't all look exactly like the Tolkien dwarves, so a lot of times people kind of go, well, that sounds great, I'd love to have my troll boyfriend.
Reading too much ACOTAR or whatever.
Yeah.
There's definitely fanfics. Yeah.
So it can be one of those things where you kind of have to take a step back and go, well, these beings are not human. They don't think the way that humans do. They don't have the cultural upbringing that a human does. They don't have the same exact morals. And so it's not uncommon for, because especially these beings tend to have great power, magical power, supernatural power, they're not used to being told no. They're not used to not getting their way. So, it can be something where the relentless pursuit of a human seems totally normal to the elf or to the troll. And they may do things that they may even think are romantic gestures that would terrify the human. Why are you leaving dead animals at my door as gifts? Like, that's weird, right? But the troll's going, oh, but I hunted this for you. Like, isn't that great?
Like a supernatural cat. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a lot of strange things. So So that's something that definitely is something that a lot of times a specialist needs to be brought in to mediate, because, and it's not to say that it's always something that ends badly for the human, or that it's automatically going to be something that is not wanted. But even if it is something that is wanted, or they're happy with their relationship with this supernatural being, there may be aspects of it that they don't understand, or they want to kind of negotiate, for lack of a better term, with the supernatural being, to be like, hey, I don't really like this, but like, can we do this, so but it can be really tumultuous, again, because these spirits are very powerful, and they don't think the way that humans do, whether we're talking about an elf or a troll or a dwarf. They don't have the same ideas about things like romance and sex and marriage and pregnancy. So it can be tumultuous, even when it is something that is, for the most part, beneficial. So that's definitely something I've had to kind of come in and help people with. And then sort of just the completely negative end of things, where somebody has pissed off a troll by being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or breaking some sort of taboo, or fucking with the forest, something like that. I'm sorry, I should have asked, am I allowed to curse on here?
Oh, please.
Oh, hell yeah.
I try to keep it
Fuck yes.
try to keep it PG,
Yeah.
but it slips out once in a while.
while.
But yeah, somebody might be in the wrong place at the wrong time. They might have, sat on a boulder, and it's the troll's house, and they're not happy that you sat on their house, all kinds of things. So sometimes it can, present itself as sort of classic haunting symptoms. And so sometimes also people may not know, is this a ghost? Is this a fairy? Is this a troll? Like, what's going on here? And somebody who has the training and the experience with these various beings can help identify it, first of all, because things that may work on a human ghost, for example, if people are having issues with that, is not going to always work with something like an elf or a troll. So identification is definitely something that's the first step, and figuring out what the issue is, what's the origin of that issue, and then where to go from there. Whether it might be, we kind of, especially in trolldom and the way that I was trained, we try to go the diplomatic route first, and try to, negotiate, try to get the being to move along, and see what we can do to kind of smooth things out. It's only after those avenues have been exhausted that we then go to, more forceful measures. And a lot of times, the more diplomatic route works well. So but having a knowledge of these beings and what their various taboos are, or what their various sort of cultures are, because even though there is overlap between things like elves and trolls, they do have their differences, and things that they expect from humans in their interactions and things like that. So it really, that experience and training sort of comes into play in all those various situations.
Makes perfect sense.
They really should make a TV show about your life. You're like a supernatural intermediary. It's so cool.
Right? Diagnosing a troll problem.
Yeah,
right?
like Dr.
Yes.
Quinn, medicine woman, or House MD, but like for magical creatures.
I love
Real quick, I just wanted, so what are some just top level do's and don'ts for trolls? If I'm out hiking, or I happen to be in Scandinavia, and I come across, like, what are some things that I should be aware of, be respectful of, if I do encounter something or someone, or like a troll? Is there something like, is it like a bear? Do I just walk away? Do I
Should
lay
I make
flat on the
myself
ground?
larger?
Yeah.
And then is it the black bear or the brown bear?
Right.
Good question. So I would say there's a couple key things, especially because trolls, and elves to some extent, but I would say especially with trolls, because they are sort of so deeply tied to the landscape, and can be so deeply tied to the landscape. Respecting nature, that's kind of a given. I mean, not one thing that's kind of more known with the elves, but I would say it's also a thing with trolls, is like, don't pee on the ground. Like, that's actually a big one. In fact, there is I don't know Icelandic, so I would totally butcher it, but there is essentially a saying in Icelandic that amounts to driving out the elves, which literally means peeing on the ground. So peeing on the ground outside. So that's something I would be really cautious about. I know if people are like camping or something like that, it might be a little hard, but hopefully they can figure something out. But just generally, respecting nature, not being an ass and obnoxious out in the woods, out in rural areas, in the mountains, things like that. Now, the other thing too, I would say that's sort of there's some overlap with elves and trolls in this regard, but I would say especially be cautious with trolls is, again, the Christianity thing. Granted, I would never want to say like all trolls are adverse to Christianity, but it is definitely a thing in a lot of the folklore that they just really don't like it, or that they sort of despise it because Christian prayers are used to try to drive them out and things like that. So that's something I would be careful of, is maybe not mentioning Christian spirits, names, prayers, things like that in front of something that, a being that you might suspect is a troll or, is a troll, so being cautious about that. I would say those are kind of two of the main troll-specific things that I would really say for people to keep in mind. Beyond that, maybe just kind of things that you could apply to other spirits, including elves, being polite, having good manners when you, interact with these beings, and not taunting them, not also being hubristic. That's something that definitely is also a crossover with the elves, is that, sort of bragging and boasting and obvious displays of hubris are usually very frowned upon by a lot of these inhuman beings. So I would say like those are probably some of the main things. Now, on the flip side, if somebody is having what they suspect might be troll issues, then Christianity might come into play to keep them at bay. Again, I'm sure not all trolls are, adverse to Christianity. Some of them might be Christians. But yeah, so maybe if that is an issue though, and you're trying to drive out trolls or trying to keep them away from you, then Christian prayers or invoking the names of God or Jesus or saints might be something that could come in useful.
Interesting.
All right.
Good to know.
Very interesting. Okay, I have one. We should probably get around to drawing a card at some point soon, but I do have one more question. Did you see the movie Red One that came out like a month and a half ago, the Christmas movie?
No, I haven't. It's on my list because I've seen some previews and people have told me that it's pretty good. So I do plan on checking it out. Does it have a troll?
Yeah, I thought it was delightful. When you watch it, I would love to hear your thoughts. The main villain is Grilla and her 7 troll sons.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is such a specific...
I love that.
I was so surprised.
Grilla's breaking into mainstream Hollywood, y'all.
It is.
That's super cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the most accurate portrayal of like the myth, but
probably not. Yeah.
But I liked the movie nonetheless.
That makes me. I'm glad you told me that because that makes me want to see it even more. Now, on that note, if people are interested in a troll-focused film to watch. One that I highly recommend is called Border. I don't know if I'm trying to remember if I think it's a Swedish film. And in fact, yes, I'm pretty sure it is because I believe it's based on a book that was also written by the author who did Let the Right One In.
Oh, interesting. Border, like BORDER, like the border between things?
Border, yeah. BORDER, yeah. And I think it's on like Amazon Prime, but it's about troll people. And obviously they do take creative liberties with some of the folklore and stuff like that. But overall, it's a really well done film, and it's really interesting and definitely has some basis in the folklore. So it has to do a lot too with like I think might have mentioned this, but another crossover that elves and trolls have is the idea of changelings. Sometimes trolls will swap out a troll baby for a human baby. So the whole idea of troll changelings and troll people and things like that is a huge theme of the movie, and it's really well done.
Interesting.
Cool.
Okay, cool. That's
Definitely
a
will
must.
watch that.
That's going to be a must watch for us.
Yeah, let me know if you like it.
Yeah. Okay, so should we draw a card? How do we feel?
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay, so I have my Winged Enchantment Oracle deck here, which real ones will remember is a bird Oracle deck, which I don't think we've drawn a card from in a couple seasons. So,
Really?
and
Has it
this
been that
is-
long?
I think so. I could be wrong, but here it is, Winged Enchantment Oracle. There's the cover for the people watching video, which is just probably Kate and Rose.
I was going to say, no,
so
I'm not recording
there's
video
no
for this
way,
one.
that anyone else will know. Okay, so it's let me just
I
start
feel like
that
we
all
should
over.
mention, by the way, that we had some major technical difficulties in the middle of me telling people how not to piss off trolls.
yeah. There
trolls
might
got
be
real
one
mad
in the
at-
room with us right now. Yeah.
At that. Yeah, that was so funny.
I just imagine like a troll being like, lady, like, how are we going to kidnap people if you don't give them, like, come on.
Stop airing our
Please.
secrets.
Yes.
They were just about to pee in the woods.
Oh, I also wanted to shout out. So we were talking before we recorded that you have a special tarot deck that I obviously, you don't have it with you in the moment, but can you just briefly tell us about that deck? I'm so curious about it.
Yeah, it's the John Bauer Tarot, which is John Bauer is known. He's an artist that's known for drawing like Germanic stuff, trolls, elves. He's also done like Freya and all this kind of stuff. So the artwork is gorgeous. I don't think it's like a rare deck or anything. So I think if you just search like John Bauer, which is Bauer, John Bauer Tarot, you should be able to find it. And it's really beautiful. I tend to be a little bit more of a playing card gal, but when I do use tarot, I really like this deck. It's beautiful, and I especially love to use it if the reading is pertaining to my Norse spirit allies. So
Nice.
look it up,
Yeah, we'll
folks.
link to that. We'll link to that on our website as well. That's awesome.
Awesome.
And
Okay.
what do the birds have for us today?
All right, we have Kingfisher, number 18. Kingfisher. Here, let me show you the art. It's like
That's pretty.
kind of like a guy surfing. There's really no picture of a kingfisher in here, I don't think.
It's the spirit of the king.
Oh, I see. There's a little bird head right at the bottom.
Who is the artist for this?
So this is written by Leslie Morrison with artwork by Lisa Hunt. And let me read you a little bit about the Kingfisher.
Okay.
So, 18, Kingfisher. It's an oracle deck, so we have to just read it. There's no tarot card equivalent. Okay. I am Kingfisher, master of the deep. I am retrieval of the past. I am seeker of the unknown. I am the one you send into the darkest waters of the mind. I am discovery. I am the extraction of what hinders movement. I am restoration. You have hidden something beneath your surface. I will release you from what ties you to the bottom. Things must come to light now. Indecision must be washed away. I am the promise of new warmth and abundance. I am the one who restores the calm. There is no greater catharsis than the renewal of consciousness. You are release. You are claimer of the dark waters. You are subconscious alignment. You are Kingfisher.
Oh.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an
Well,
intense
all
card.
right
Right. Okay.
That like
I'm digging
stirred
that.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
That made me emotional. Oh.
That artwork is really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
really love the artwork on this. It's a lot of them are like kind of half people, half birds.
Ooh.
So it's like here's hummingbird is right at the bottom, so I'll show you that too. But it's like a lady with a hummingbird and a bunch of like flowers coming out of her.
That's very
We'll post
cool.
a photo of the Kingfisher card on our Instagram as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
love that
Whoa,
message.
that's a thinker.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
deep.
I'm gonna
That's a
be-
marinate
I'm gonna ponder
one.
that one.
Yeah. Well, Rose, this has been so great talking to
Yes,
you.
thank you so much for all this really, really fascinating info. How
Thank
can
you guys.
people get in touch with you, hire
Or find you, follow you, whatever you're doing right now.
Yes.
Are you open to that?
Yeah,
and if so,
absolutely. my books are open, baby.
Nice. Woohoo.
Yeah, so I have a website. It's Rose Auroras with an S at the end.com. People can read some more info there about me, about the services that I offer. As I mentioned earlier, I give readings, I teach people. And I actually, teaching is the most fun thing for me that I offer. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I love to take on new students. Regardless of experience level, I have people that are all different, different sides of the spectrum. So, hit me up, including if you'd like to learn some trolldom. I am essentially certified to teach and to mentor people in that. So hit me up. So that's my website. And then I am on Instagram, which is also just at Rose Auroras. And that's kind of the best place to keep up with, if I'm doing podcasts or doing some classes and things like that. I do have a class that I did last year for Salem Witch Fest that I have a link in my bio on Instagram to the recording. It's about the Scandinavian elves. And I just found out that I am going to be presenting again at Salem Witch Fest this year about about the Celtic fairies, which is going to be really fun and exciting. Ooh. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to keep people updated on my Insta, all about that stuff. And that's where to find me.
Awesome. Yay. Thank you so much. That's super so exciting.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me back again. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, our pleasure. And if you liked this episode, you can always follow us on Instagram at Witchcast Podcast. You can email us at witchcastpodcast@gmail.com. You can check out our website, witchcastpodcast.com, where we will have all of the resources that we talked about, or at least a couple of the books we talked about in this episode, posted. And you can see books mentioned in previous episodes and other resources.
Do it.
And hey, while you're out there on the internet, what's always great is just leaving something that you love, a 5-star review. For example, this podcast,
just a little 5 stars, a little review, a little like, maybe and subscribe.
Maybe on Apple Podcasts. That would be a good place to do that if you were going to do that.
It helps others find us, and it makes us really happy.
I'm really happy. Yeah. And until next time, heck
yeah!
'Cause it's Witchcast.